One thing I notice whenever the abortion discussion comes up is that people often jump to extreme scenarios to justify their position on the issue. And one of those scenarios I want to talk about today is this question over what if it's 5 minutes before birth? Should it be legal for the woman to terminate the pregnancy? So let's think this scenario through for a second. A woman is in a delivery room in a hospital, presumably after being rushed to the hospital. At this point, for about 9 months, she's tolerated the various burdens and stresses that come with pregnancy. She's probably had a baby shower and been celebrated by all of her friends and family and loved ones. She's had routine checkups with her doctor and looked at some ultrasounds. She's posted all sorts of stuff on various social media in excitement for the big day. A name has been picked out, the baby's room is set up with a crib and stuffed animals and cute wallpaper and everything. The delivery room is all hands on deck with doctors and nurses, maybe some family, all excited, coaching the woman through. Then the soon-to-be mom, at the last minute, suddenly decides, you know what? On second thought, I'm actually not sure if I'm ready, if I'm on board for all of this motherhood business. Is it too late to, And then the medical professionals in the delivery room are just like, oh yeah, no worries, this is totally normal. In fact, we have a guy on call for situations just like this. So you just sit tight, relax, and we'll get this all straightened out.
What a sick joke!
As if this is how most abortions happen. According to the CDC, roughly 92 to 93% of abortions are performed before week 13 of the pregnancy, and fewer than 1% are performed after week 21 of the pregnancy. And after week 21, the procedure becomes both more expensive and increasingly difficult to perform. Considering all of this, is the 5 minutes before birth question, is this the right place to start the whole debate over whether or not abortion should be legal?
Yeah, to the no, yeah, to the no, to the no, no, no.
Maybe at this point, the discussion should start at the question over whether or not abortion should be legal 5 minutes after conception. I say this because a lot of anti-abortionists would say no, abortion should be illegal across the board. And it's not like this is some loud fringe minority on the internet or whatever. According to Politico, when we look at a lot of the abortion laws that are being written or currently exist at the state level, there are 14 states seeking to outlaw abortion at conception, either through trigger laws, pre-Roe v. Wade laws, or new legislation, which is over twice as many states that currently allow for abortion throughout the pregnancy. It's one thing if someone were in favor of legalized abortion and then is on the fence or maybe has doubts after the point of viability, which is understandable, and that seems to be where most Americans are on this issue. According to CBS News, most Americans appear to think that abortion should be legal to an extent. The disagreement appears to be over which sort of restrictions there should be. According to a recent survey from Harvard-Harris, over 50% of Americans think that abortion should be legal up to 15 weeks, with over half of that 50% thinking that abortion should be legal beyond 15 weeks. And according to a recent article published by Pew Research, over 61% of Americans are in favor of legalized abortion. So imagine being in favor of legalized abortion, maybe with some restrictions, and then going to a place like Kentucky that's trying to make abortion illegal at fertilization, and then trying to start the debate at whether or not abortion should be legal at 5 minutes before birth. Why waste your time? And I see people who want to outlaw abortion at conception, at fertilization, try to play this game. immediately jumping to the question over 5 minutes before birth, as if that's the thing they're really concerned about. I think it's often a red herring. It's disingenuous coming from people who essentially want to subordinate a fully grown woman, or in some cases, teenage girls, to a blastocyst inside of their uterus.
Babies! They're babies!
Now, some anti-abortionists will claim that they are in favor of exceptions in cases where the mother's life is in danger, and the legislation in a lot of these anti-abortion states seem to reflect this sentiment, which I guess is better than nothing. My concern is that you're potentially creating a situation where women and doctors could suddenly become suspects of a crime, serious crimes like manslaughter or murder, if they need to terminate a pregnancy in an emergency situation. So it's bad enough that a woman has to make a devastating choice to save her own life, and on top of that, she now has to deal with police detectives, lawyers, and government bureaucrats? I guess we gotta do all of this on the off chance that a woman going into labor after a good 9 months might start getting second thoughts. Not to mention, as we've seen, promising exceptions is not always effective. According to an article on Reuters and other sources, abortion used to be illegal in Argentina, and during this time, Argentina promised to grant exceptions in cases of rape. And then there was the story of an 11-year-old rape victim who sought an exception at week 19 of the pregnancy. Unfortunately, the approval process took roughly 5 weeks, which by then no doctor in the country wanted to perform the procedure. And then the 11-year-old reportedly had to carry the pregnancy to term via a C-section. But hey, at least nobody in Argentina was getting an abortion 5 minutes before birth. And while we're on the topic of losing sight of the debate, I think that many on the left and a lot of Democrat politicians have been really terrible at defending abortion rights. Probably because many on the left and many Democrat politicians disregard individual rights, often seeking to violate individual rights, often in the name of altruism and the collective. And so because they cannot defend abortion on grounds of freedom and individual rights, they often resort to grasping at straws, saying stuff like if they were actually pro-life, then they would be in favor of all of my stupid-ass socialist policies. What's with the left, who for years have mastered the art of anti-concepts and inventing bullshit terms and manipulating language in effort to cloud people's judgment and thinking on a variety of issues? Yet on one of the issues that the left is not wrong about, they just let their opponents get away with implicitly claiming the moral high ground with concepts like pro-life.
You absolutely suck!
On one hand, the pro-legalized abortion advocates, they rightfully claim that the government has no right to get involved in a woman's medical decisions. But on the other hand, many of these same people on the left, many of these same Democrat politicians, they want the government to take over the entire healthcare system, at least the financing mechanisms, which would essentially only get the government involved in every medical decision.
That's just not smart.
It's been pointed out that many of these Democrat politicians and people on the left, they were loud cheerleaders and advocates for vaccine mandates during the pandemic. Yeah, let's force people to take a vaccine against their will, and if they don't, then there should be legal consequences, they said. Even here in Los Angeles, many businesses were forced to make their patrons show a proof of vaccine at the door and wrap cloth around their mouths before they were allowed to enter the business. So yeah, you sort of lose the high ground on the right to make health choices and medical decisions when you're constantly in everyone's business. Democrats, get your shit together. But unfortunately, this is the corner that many Democrat politicians and people on the left have backed themselves into. They want to force you to get a vaccine. They want to decide which firearms you're allowed to keep and not keep. They want to decide whether or not you should be allowed to work as a private contractor. They want to decide whether or not you should be allowed to consume your beverage with a plastic straw. They want to decide how much money you get to make and keep. They for years have demonized greed and selfishness when it comes to corporations making money and billionaires paying their fair share, whatever the hell that means. They want to outlaw fossil fuel energy as they hold up that goof Greta No Thunberg as she runs around the world demanding that everyone make sacrifice their wonderful high standard of living for the sake of future generations. In other words, people that may not have been born yet. So when people on the right come along and say, yeah, it's totally fine to force people to sacrifice their rights and interests for the sake of the unborn, suddenly people on the left and these Democrat politicians have no moral high ground to stand on, folks. It's bad enough that the anti-abortionists know exactly what they want and are motivated in achieving their goal. To make matters worse, the people who are trying to stand up for abortion rights lack the moral clarity to effectively oppose the anti-abortionists. Either way, before we get to the 5 minutes before birth debate, maybe we should first settle the debate over whether or not abortion should be legal 5 minutes after conception.